I've got my tea. Hello, how's it going? My name is Hector Acuna and welcome back to my channel. This is part 3 in the 30 by 30 by 30 exhibition video series where I'm sharing the process of preparing my panels and all of my materials for an upcoming daily painting project for the month of January in 2024. If you're not familiar with this project, please take a moment and visit my channel where you will find parts 1 and 2 in the series. So without further ado, enjoy this video. So the first step in making my paint was to make my egg tempera emulsion. So what you're looking at is the egg yolk that has been separated from the egg white in just a kind of basic grocery store white egg. And then the membrane was poked so that you have just the yolk, which is then mixed with equal parts of distilled water. And I'm just kind of eyeballing this here in the studio. And I add a few drops of distilled vinegar just to keep the emulsion from spoiling as quickly. Now I'm taking out some raw umber pigment that I got from Gamblin, and mixing that initially with just a little bit of the distilled water to create a paste. This allows for the pigment to disperse a little bit more smoothly when I add the emulsion after I get a very smooth kind of paste. So here you can see I'm adding in a little bit of my emulsion, and I'm just using the end of a brush handle to mix in the emulsion with the pigment paste. Now I'm doing the same thing with titanium white. This is usually the most complicated and time-consuming part of painting with egg tempera, is mixing up your paint. And these metal ramekin containers have been working out really well, just to keep everything organized and separated. So then I clean off the jar and I can start to prepare my sort of still life area in my studio. If you've been following my work for the last 2 years, you'll notice in a lot of my studio work there's this continuous motif of boxes paired with hands and other kind of human fragments of the body. So right now I'm just trying out some new materials that I purchased from Michael's. This is a kind of grass texture mat that is created on some sort of paper that you can just cut to fit any sort of project. The really cool thing about my setup right now is that I have this particular light bulb that came with a controller to change the hue of the light, the brightness of the light, and just to turn the light bulb on and off. One of the things I really like about it is that even if you click on a neutral light, you can flip through a few different variations of temperature. So you'll have some cooler natural light or white light, and then some warmer white light as well. So I don't know at the moment if I'll be sticking with a particular hue for a lot of the paintings for the 30 by 30 show, or if they'll all vary in the kind of color properties from the light that I use. But I'll certainly be using this light bulb for all of those paintings. Now I have my kind of test setup here with my camera tripod that I use for plein air painting. I have this small box that was gifted to me as a groomsman gift from my brother-in-law that I've turned into kind of like a palette box. And then I have my Glow-Cuscent light clipped on the top of the lid. So I've got really good lighting over my panel. And this is the ACM traditionally gessoed panel. It's sort of like my test panel. The surface of this panel was a lot more rough than the rest of the panels for the 30 by 30 show. I learned a little bit about how much of the gesso to apply and then how much to sand the surface. So I'm just sketching in my view, which I don't have an image of, but basically it's this small box that I built out of cardboard and paper and then I've carved a hole on one side. And I'm trying out something new where I'm taking an article of clothing and wrapping it around the box. So I found this sock that has stripes that I think just has an interesting color palette and structure in terms of its striped pattern and design. So I really like the shapes that it created in the sock and for the painting. So that's kind of tucked over a large portion of the box, and then I have a small little hand sculpted hat that is sitting on a piece of wire that has then been tucked on or into the box of my sculpture. And you can see in the drawing there's this little sort of hat shape on the upper right portion of the painting, and this is the very start of applying the egg tempera paint. So this is the raw umber color, and just sort of diluted with water and the emulsion. So those initial marks are helping me kind of gauge my darkest values in my view. So I'm looking at my still life setup where I can see the darkest values where those shadow areas of the form meet the ground plane. Also, that small sort of cavity hole on the top plane of the box was one of the darkest values that I saw as well. And then here in a second, we'll start to see the time lapse of blocking in the rest of the painting. So you'll notice in the time lapse how quickly the paint dries on the surface, and the ways that the moisture in the emulsion and the water absorb into the traditional gesso, which in a lot of ways I feel like it's very similar in its temperament. Egg tempera's sort of physical nature to gouache. If you've ever tried gouache paint, it's very similar because it has a little bit of a matte kind of surface quality, but it dries very quickly. And I like both mediums, gouache and egg tempera, because it's similar to drawing. You make a mark and it sort of stays on the surface. You don't really have to deal with blending or muddying up your colors. It's really easy to build up the form through hatching and cross-hatching, which are terms that I learned in more of like a drawing medium. I think most people, form kind of a linear understanding of the illusion of volume when drawing. So if you have those skills and you have that experience with drawing, I think it translates really well to egg tempera. This is where I stopped, and I just wanted to take a moment and buff out this layer, which is something that I think you should really do after the egg tempera paintings have cured. But I've also heard that you can buff out in between layers as well, or gently sand in between layers as well, and this will build up a really glossy surface in the final layer of the painting. So that's what I'm doing here, and since my other hand is holding my phone, I have to be kind of careful about the direction that I'm buffing the painting with this clean folded blue shop towel over on my painting taboret cart. So you can start to see, especially in the areas where there's a lot of titanium white pigment, there's a really reflective kind of shiny quality, which is something I've noticed in other egg tempera paintings I've made so far. It doesn't always feel like pigments like raw umber buff out to as even or reflective of a sheen, at least not as much as titanium white tends to do. And this is where I stopped with the egg tempera. I was really happy with the final form of the box and the hat and the invented landscape that I had here. And you can see the aftermath of my materials. So I have my 2 ramekin containers of both pigments, and then the palette that I used, which was just a piece of plexiglass that fits right inside of the that box that I showed earlier, my sort of paint box on the tripod. So everything is a pretty small setup. It's really easy to travel with and doesn't take up a lot of room, which is nice. And then I just kind of wanted to see what this painting looks like within a group of panels that are the same size. So because this is going to be a grouping of egg tempera paintings, I kind of wanted to see, like, the proportions of the box within this composition, how big or small things appear next to similar panels. And then actually here you can see the still life setup that I created in my studio. So this is going to be kind of the process I'll be taking through the next 4 weeks in my studio as I create 30 of these egg tempera paintings. And then something I've been wanting to try for a while is combining oil paint with egg tempera. And this is the first experiment with combining both mediums. So I'm just taking a little bit of linseed oil medium, which is a oleo gel from Natural Pigments or Rublev Colors, and some cadmium red light oil paint, and just sort of diluting it down with the linseed oil medium so it glides and blends really easily across the surface of the dried and buffed egg tempera painting. And so my initial idea here was to coat the entire panel and create a very even, almost like filtered look over the painting, and see if that was something that I liked. So I left it alone for a moment, and then after a minute or two had passed, I decided I would actually remove and subtract some of the paint and experiment a little bit with, creating more of a variety in the surface quality between the egg tempera surface and the oil paint. And I just sort of played around with this very organically. I didn't have, a guideline or plan that I was following. I was just responding to the process here pretty organically. I'm just sort of pulling off more of the oil paint and trying to create more of a contrast in values by glazing over the egg tempera painting. It sort of compressed and evened out a lot of the contrast in the values. So this was something that I was trying to really play around with. And obviously here you can see I'm pushing the saturation and chroma in parts of the painting. And I'm not sure if this is something I'll do with the 30 by 30 paintings. If I do, I might make it a little bit more selective and pulled back, where the oil paint doesn't take as much of a role in the process. But this is where the painting kind of ended up. So you can see I'm blending a lot of those edges with a softer synthetic brush. This is the final look of the painting. The lighting here is a little bit inaccurate, but you can see I ended up wiping off more of the cadmium red light, so it's a bit more muted in the saturation. And like I said, I might not add in as much saturation on the 30 by 30 by 30 paintings that I'll start here on January 1st. But I just wanted to share this test painting and share some of those initial experiments that I had. I hope you enjoyed watching the process, and stay tuned for part 4 in the series. Alright, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. My name is Hector Acuna. If you want to see more of my work, please visit my website, acunaarts.com. To follow along with this project on Instagram, find my studio account at Hector Acuna _studio. You can also view more of my outdoor painting or plein air painting work at Hector Acuna _plein air. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to sharing more of this series with you in the near future. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.